Gentlemen, we were going to start with introductions. Parker graciously did that for us, so I guess we'll jump right into it. We're here to talk about Lightning Network, interoperability, usability, but before we even get into the nitty-gritty of the Lightning Network, let's talk about something more broader, which is just making Bitcoin generally more approachable. I know that's something you're very passionate about, Michael.
Yeah, appreciate the nice intros. I don't have a surprise altcoin announcement. We're a Bitcoin laser-focused company. I'm proud to say that, and there's a lot of folks, Miles, Jack Dorsey, the whole team is to thank, not me. I'm the new guy. So appreciate that kind of kickoff statement. Is we often dive right into the Lightning Network. I'm wearing a Lightning Bolt t-shirt, but it's not about the Lightning Network. It's about making Bitcoin usable as a currency, right? Like, I couldn't, Christopher was talking about Starbucks, right? And that is amazing. I worked on Apple Pay. I know that integration as well. It needs to be that easy. And if I have to wait 10 minutes, I literally got this coffee 4 minutes before this. If I had to wait 10 minutes, the coffee would be cold and I'd be late to my meeting. So it has to be instant, frictionless, and practically free to move to be money. So that's my kind of customer obsessed lens and how I think about it. And if Lightning Network can be that technical solve, let's do it.
Yeah, I think that's, or go ahead, Rockstar.
I mean, that's the mission for me as well, being one of the developers that worked on about non-custodial and custodial solutions. So core motivation, getting Bitcoin to the point where it is frictionless and it's good UX. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that sort of irks me a little bit about the way people view Bitcoin. Let's say it's hard to use, which is certainly true. I wouldn't say it's hard to use. It's just a foreign sort of interaction with this new protocol. But as you guys have proven with both your companies, whether it be CashApp or Strike, to use Bitcoin, you really just need to download an app, sometimes point a QR code, and you're on the network. So what have you guys done to really drive that user experience to make it somewhat magical, where you just download an app and you're on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the journey started with BTC Pay server, which Michael and me talked before this talk to agree on terminology. Yeah, it's like a non-custodial or self-custodial. And there are simply some trade-offs that you can't avoid if you're dealing with that. But I think even with BTC Pay server, we made it quite a good experience. And then after that, it was going over to the dark side, as some people say, like custodial solutions. But they're necessary, especially with Lightning, because you have managing of channels, you have liquidity, you have all those small things that are necessary in order to go towards what's essentially a superpower of Lightning Network, which is settlement. So, I mean, I don't know, Marty, for me, it's just about continuing to do the work we have done. And especially with Strike now, it's not only about those small payments, it's about sending money across the world, which is what Jack talked about, with remittances. So yeah, just we need to keep pushing, and we are there. I mean, a lot of people now daily use Strike, and they're like, this is a good experience. It's not where Christopher said, hey, can tap, but it's a good experience.
Yeah, your question is around just making it so easy, right? I think we do generally agree as an industry that custodial is easier, right? But we were talking, if we're just all custodial options in 10, 15, 20 years from now, like we didn't solve for the strengths of Bitcoin, right? So we do need to, over time, make, we're debating a little bit self-custody, non-custodial, even the terminology, all of these are like disgusting terms. No consumer should ever think non-custodial, self-custody, right? It should just work, right? So I worked at Apple Pay for 4 to 5 years. If you think about it, probably most people in this audience have an iPhone. Your Apple photos are a 2 of 2 multi-sig backed up to iCloud. Do you see that anywhere in Apple's terminology? It just works. You drop it in the toilet, you go to the Apple store, you punch in your information, and all your photos are there. And it's securely encrypted with a public and private key. And backed up to iCloud. So nobody knows it. It just works. So I think we're eventually going to get there. And right now, custodial is a solution. Lots of really cool companies and products are focusing on that self-custody solution. And matter of fact, I think Block Inc. just announced 1 or 2 days ago our self-custody software and hardware wallet is going to be called BitKey. So you can go to bitkey.build to learn more about that. So super excited. We're helping solve for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing Rodolfo says, like, we probably made a big mistake even calling them wallets in the first place.
Because if you lose your wallet, you're going to lose all your money. But that's not the case with Bitcoin, right? So I think that team, I'm not on that team, but they specifically called it key and stayed away from wallet for that exact reason, right? If you lose your house key, you just go to Home Depot and you get another one. It's the same thing with this physical hardware.
Yeah, and it's not only companies that focus on payments when it comes to Lightning. Like I see a lot of great examples with infrastructure Lightning companies and LSPs. I saw Voltage recently release Flow 2.0, and it's great to have solutions like that because when you do self-custody, you can have that just-in-time liquidity, and you don't need to manage channels. So, yeah, just more progress both from payments companies and then other infrastructure, Lightning companies.
Yeah, and one thing we mentioned was interoperability, and that was, I mean, in the early days of Lightning, it was a big meme. The underlying protocol rules is going to be LND, core Lightning, async, now LDK. But it seems like over the last couple of years, particularly, there has been a push towards a more uniform sort of standard, particularly when it comes to like invoices, something like BIP21, where I think BIP21 is a huge UX improvement because it provides you a QR code that offers you an on-chain address and a Lightning invoice at the same time. And if your wallet is Lightning, you just point it to QR code, it pays the Lightning invoice instead of the on-chain. But it's simple things like this that you guys have worked to integrate that are making the UX much better.
Yeah, I wasn't here last year, and Miles is unable to be here today. I think he was hitting the BIP21 unified QR code.
Yes, he was.
Pretty hard.
Like the whole panel.
So, but we didn't want to toggle because we did user research. When you say Bitcoin and then Lightning, a lot of normies are like, is that Litecoin, right? Like, is that what, like, that's weird. It's just Bitcoin. It's not one or the other. It's just the same. So if you don't give them a paradox of choice, it's just one QR code and it just works, it's going to be a lot easier. So I think we're just at the beginning, right? We're pushing, and that was our world-class design team really did some cool, innovative stuff combined with just utilizing what was already on the Bitcoin network. It's a 10-year-old bit, right? It's just we try to push it for further adoption. So there are a lot of technical hurdles today that don't make it in Apple terms, a magical experience, and CashApp terms, delicious experience, right? Like, so Bolt 11 is great, but we're excited for Bolt 12 because it's a static QR code. So even in CashApp or most Lightning QR codes, you can't print and put on the wall. It expires 72 hours. You pay it once and that's it, right? So it just needs to be so simple, and like a static address that's privacy preserving is going to be super important, and a lot of great folks are working on that. So we're excited.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually like how Lightning development went when it comes to it was actually expect really well through all the bolts. It was just growing pains of each implementation. Lightning node implementation had its own pace. I mean, a lot of people forget, but C Lightning had just like you can open one channel, and that's one of the reasons why LND in the end became a dominant implementation. But I am excited. I mean, I'm excited for Bolt 12, definitely. I am excited about the whole ecosystem around Dell and URL. I mean, there are some really interesting things happening there. I know Parker will kill me, but yeah, still on zapping on Noster, really interesting experience. And especially if you can go a step further and you start enabling use cases like, hey, zap a note to unlock the content. Suddenly you have a marketplace there. And to quote Edward Snowden, he used Bitcoin for a number of years, but only like that zapping on Noster, really great experience. So a lot to be excited about.
Yeah. Zapping on Noster is, for those of you who don't know, Noster is this open communications protocol. And that's like the really interesting thing is that I think for the first time, in the history of software, like until Bitcoin and particularly the Lightning Network came to be, like a lot of these open source protocols didn't have like monetization vehicles or a way for the end user to monetize over this open protocol. And that's something Bitcoin, particularly over the Lightning Network, has enabled, whether it be RSS feeds, Nostr. Chris mentioned Lyle in the previous chat over VoIP and SIP. Like, it's crazy what is happening in terms of the design landscape of potential like use case and user experiences that are being created.
No, I mean, for me as a developer and someone who from start saw in Bitcoin that vehicle that will separate state and money, like it's all about that. Like now you have that money that's independent from state and you can use it in a variety of interesting use cases without searching for permission, looking for permission, getting permission. And yeah, I can't wait to see where it will take us.
So you're kind of talking about some interesting use cases with Nostr. I think we can touch on a few that we've even previously talked about, but I also wanted to kind of step back and say, Lightning solves and makes Bitcoin a currency. One analogy that's really helped me, which also plays to like the native currency of the internet, is the internet is the layer one. Email is the layer two solution. Email is a communication protocol that is now native on the internet that we all agree to and we just use. It's instant, it's free. Bitcoin network is the layer one. The layer two application is a Lightning network, right? And so you can zap each other communication, and that killer use case is zapping each other money, right? And if that becomes a standard and the just normal way everybody does it, that's just how we're going to move value. I mean, I think Jack Mallers was saying, the internet is just communication and knowledge, and Lightning Network is money, right? So that analogy often clicks pretty well with folks, and you can build a layer three, you can build applications on top of that, you can build Facebook on top of it, whatever. So just wanted to make that point. And coming back to use cases, I think there's three use cases I and we are super excited about. One being remittances, right? I think Jack Mallers and Strike have been super awesome building great tools and advocating for that use case experience. Number two is an obvious one would be payments over time, especially if you can reduce the cost for merchants and make a delicious, magical user experience for customers. And then third is this, it's kind of a big bucket, but the native currency of the internet. So Nostr, value for value podcasts, streaming sats for music, podcasting, paywalls, right? Hey, I'll read this Wall Street Journal article for 100 sats, but I'll never pay you $9.99 a month, right? Like I'll do that all the time. I get a paywall every 3 times a month. I pay them $0. And so 99% of people just bounce. Well, I would pay micropayments. So Jack Dorsey kind of famously says he personally believes that Bitcoin will become the native currency for the internet. And I think the previous panels that every single business can look different because of that.
Yeah. Just like in the 90s, when every company was like, this internet thing's weird. What's that @ symbol? Little did they know they would all become internet companies in one way or another. This is a trend that's going to happen with Bitcoin too. People may be laughing at Bitcoin now, but they'll eventually have to incorporate Bitcoin into their business.
Like Nike was like, should we become an internet company? Like now, of course, you have to be on the internet, Nike, right? Now everybody's like, should we become a crypto or a Bitcoin company? Like, of course, you will have to become a Bitcoin company to survive and exist in the future world.
Yeah, well, and that gets to that future world. There's a lot of progress that needs to be made between now and then. We mentioned UX improvements like BIP21, Bolt 12 will be a good one if and when it gets enabled. You mentioned Flow 2.0 at Voltage for channel management. What are some of the other things you're looking at, particularly on the Lightning Network, that will significantly help you guys create a better user experience around your products?
So I know I'm borrowing a lot from my days at Apple Pay, but Apple Pay's tagline was easy, secure, private. I'm pretty sure they did a bunch of research that that's what consumers want with money. They want it to be easy, they want it to be secure, and they want it to be private. And full understanding. I know we're all excited about the future of money, but most people, like, it's a really stressful thing. It's like the number one reason why people get divorced is over like finances. Like most people don't love money. It's like a really stressful thing in their life. So they just want to be easy, secure, and private. So that's kind of the framework I'm thinking of as a product manager, focused on making it dead simple and easy to use. So there's just continuous improvements, whether it's a unified QR code for easy, whether it's a static Lightning offer. LDK and the Spiral team is starting to roll out Bolt 12 support, like it's happening right now, and people are integrating that. So these technologies are happening. So all kinds of easy. I mean, it'd be magical if you could tap on NFC one day and pay a Lightning invoice. And maybe Apple and Google and others need to change that. But I think that's all inevitable. So that's easy, secure. We've talked about self-custody versus custodial. There's pros and cons, right? Like your money is super safe with CashApp. we have a really fantastic, and I'm sure with Strike and all these custodial solutions, we have amazing cold and hot wallet solutions. And maybe you don't trust yourself with a private key, and maybe you should trust it with a company, at least for now. And then private, obviously self-custody, a hardware wallet, multi-sig, there's all kinds of things you can increase your privacy, but Bolt 12, Onion messages, blinded pass, they're all coming and increase your privacy. So we just keep compounding these technical solutions with the customer experience in mind, and it's super exciting. They're all happening. What else do you have on the technical side?
Well, I mean, you covered pretty much everything. What else to cover? No, for me, it's just all about continuing to work and hope that we know that banks will crash, but I mean, this is ridiculous recently, like that they don't crash so hard that startups are left without banking services, can't make payroll. In the meantime, we just need to keep working. That's all.
Yeah. Shout out to Jeff from the Spiral team getting Bolt 12 ready for us.
See, I knew it. I saw him coding. He's getting it done.
And so, I mean, we're talking about like custodial, non-custodial. I think that's one interesting thing. I'm pretty sure has been articulated by both companies is that you guys are seeing a lot of people simply use your apps. Not all your users, but a lot are simply using it as an on-ramp to Bitcoin, then quickly getting off. What about your applications makes it easy for users to do this?
So I've only been at CashApp less than 2 years. When they launched buy, sell Bitcoin, I think 5 years ago, day one, they allowed withdrawals. It's like core to our principles, right? Almost every other large custodial company, I think PayPal, I think Robinhood, when I think about that, it took them years, right? They offered buy, sell, and then they're like, oh, years later, we'll support that self-custody thing. So it's a core value that we take very seriously at Block and CashApp. I think other things we're doing and have live today is we have a free withdrawal option. There's a lot of exchanges that and apps that charge mining fees and or added fees on top of that, but we have a free option for all customers. And probably third thing is coming soon is that BitKey hardware wallet solution. And you can imagine there will probably be a delicious, magical user experience between CashApp and that wallet in the future, and we'll do our best to make that synergy easy and to understand. And to your point, tons of people do on-chain withdrawals to self-custody. I don't have the exact numbers right now, but we do see a lot of our customers do that, and we want them to do that. We champion that, and we tell people to do that all the time.
Yeah, so when I started developing backend of Strike, that was a main goal, to get to the point where you can deposit money from the bank and you can instantly use that money to pay Lightning invoices. And I loved coding it because I needed it myself, like I didn't want to get into the whole buy Bitcoin, record what is the exchange rate, then when you're sending, you like sell Bitcoin, pay taxes and all that experience. Like I personally couldn't wait to get to the point where that experience is in Strike, and it became it's like our core offering, to the point where when we launched buy Bitcoin, like a lot of people were like, what? Like, I'm already buying Bitcoin, I'm just sending it to my node, like I'm paying the invoice. So that's how I'm using it. And when it comes to that functionality, I mean, I think it's core functionality that a lot of people use and enjoy it, especially because with Strike, same with CashApp, like from day one, you had the ability to withdraw that Bitcoin, not through like withdrawal functionality, but through send functionality. And
Yeah,
Just one thing to add, right? I think a lot of us in this room are super excited about Bitcoin and probably power users. But what I think a lot of awesome companies have been doing, whether it's Strike with paid in Bitcoin, we've added an option to get paid in Bitcoin and automatically put a percentage of your direct deposit into Bitcoin with zero fees, and it's super easy. Swan Bitcoin does really cool stuff where you can auto withdraw, I think, every week, which is a super cool feature. We've recently enabled roundups, and so Bitcoin roundup. So when you use your cash card, you just automatically save, round up your spare change and put it into Bitcoin. And the reason I'm bringing this up because that really is attractive to Bitcoin curious people, right? And they get curious, they get $10, $20, $30, and a month later they're like, oh, sweet. And then they're like, oh, I heard I should, self-custody this. Oh, let me buy that super easy wallet, right? Or key or whatever we're gonna kind of name it. So at least, from our lens, we're always focusing on being an awesome solution for the power users, but we're also being very mindful that just completely new people can get in with as little as $1 without even thinking automatically as well.
Yeah, and one big thing with Bitcoin is that ability to offer services and reach people not only in US but outside of US, as we saw with remittances, like that, really looking how to serve that global audience. And maybe it is my focus in Strike that where for us, it's really now for us, it's all about that. It's like, how do you reach more people? And it's much easier to reach more people with Bitcoin than with fiat and all the regulations, overhead, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's another cool thing around the UX that the Lightning Network enables, and your two companies really make shine, is the interoperability. Like a CashApp user could send Bitcoin to a Strike user, where if you think years ago, like a Venmo user sending money to a CashApp user was impossible. So what does this type of interoperability, you guys enabling the Lightning Network in your apps and being able to pay any invoice or receive from any other wallet, what does that do to competition, or how you guys think about building products? Does it lead to more collaboration, or?
I mean, it makes us better, really, and opens up field for other players to step up, whether they're here in US or outside of US. And I also loved in the intro when we had Farida telling her story, how for her it's not that Bitcoin is a choice, it's an only option. And yeah, that's what I saw when I went to Ghana, Africa in December, is for people in Africa, actually Bitcoin may end up being a standard way before it becomes standard in developed world, because it's a critical problem for them. When they want to settle in Africa, they have more than 40 central banks, and settling is they also do settlements not in Africa but in Europe, like in France. So when you do need to settle and okay, who owes who what assets, liabilities, it's excruciating problem. And that's why you're seeing what Jack said is if you can source dollars and just get them to Africa using power of Bitcoin or that local currency, settlement is so much easier. And yeah, that's focus for us at Strike, and what we're looking at right now.
So your question is about kind of interoperability and open standards versus closed standards. I don't have the exact numbers. I tweeted it, so I'm going to butcher it a little bit. But coming back to that email analogy, right? Like a Twitter, I think gets 30,000 tweets a second. Email has tens of millions sent a second, right? And this is what's super exciting about Nostr and the decentralized web is there can be hundreds of apps and they all just connect to the same thing. There's no walled garden, right? And so when you just think about the power of that, how challenging email would be if I had to get permission from Gmail and Yahoo and Gmail needed to do a deal and sign paperwork to be able to communicate, and then you have Proton Mail and I can't email you because you're outside the wall. It would be miserable. All email just works. So another analogy is, so I've had the pleasure to work for both Jack Dorsey at Block and Elon Musk when I was at Tesla. And so now Elon Musk owns Twitter. It's just very interesting dynamic. But I worked on the supercharger team. And in the United States, the supercharging, which is the network to supercharge your cars, was closed. And they recently opened it, right? But how weird would it be if you went to a gas station by Ford and they only gave gas to Ford trucks, right? Like that's what the Tesla supercharger was. But now it's open to everybody. And like any EV can charge at a supercharger. And so it's good for their business. It's good for EV adoption. Like everybody wins, right? So I think it's very clear that open protocols are the way to go and have a much wider breadth. To your point, globally, there's no borders, there's no contracts, there's no paper. It's just seamless, just works. It's just native.
Yeah, I mean, when you add, it's crazy. It never actually hit me until you just added that context of email, supercharging stations, gas stations. Like, it is pretty crazy how fractured the monetary system is. Like something as fundamental as sending money between individuals to coordinate economic activity, which is arguably the most important activity that we engage in as humans. Like, it is crazy how much we screwed it up.
Well, I think a big thing when we were at that Bitcoin conference that Farida put together in Ghana, and one of the biggest things that hit me was the fact that I think there's 48 central banks throughout Africa. And just imagine, imagine if there's 50 central banks in America, and I'm in Texas right now, I live in California, you're just like strikes in Chicago. Like if I wanted to do business with New York, like I would need to convert my currency and like this is what happens in Africa. If you're in one country, you can't send cross-border, right? And so like imagine how much harder the US GDP and just economy would be if we couldn't exchange email and we couldn't exchange money across our state lines. Like if we had 50 different currencies and 200 different payment protocols, it's like, oh, Swift for this, Venmo for that, this other thing for Maryland, this thing for Virginia, it would be a nightmare and business would just be squandered and our economic growth would be terrible. So yeah, open networks for the win for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about avoiding that usage of money as a system of control. Like that's where really most of my motivation comes from, because I grew up in hyperinflation and saw a situation where your own government is working against you for your own good. I mean, what I've learned growing up is that all governments do that to a degree, but it's really like when hyperinflation starts, it's not a level at which you want to be at. But in the end, yeah, we simply must go towards open networks, especially when it comes to money. And yeah, we are on the road there.
Well, that's a very good point to bring up, is governments and Bitcoin playing under the purview of governments. You guys are certainly pushing the edge of what large companies are doing with Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin's a big political punching bag these days. How do you guys approach the regulatory side of things and really try to communicate with the government like, hey, this is beneficial, we're trying to push the edge here to innovate, please leave us alone and let us do our thing?
Well, I'm a product guy, you're an engineer. Like we have a whole amazing like policy team. You know, we're a publicly traded company. I used to live in Washington, D.C. I personally didn't love politics, so I left. I went to California to build stuff, so I'm probably not the best person to answer that. But you know, a lot of people are kind of fighting that good fight, because if we overregulate and we don't treat this new exciting technology with innovation lenses, we're not going to be forward moving. And so, yeah, I mean, just kind of tying that question a little bit to what you were saying as well was, you know, I didn't grow up in hyperinflation, but I'm half Lebanese, and I don't know if you've been following the news, but even just 2 days ago, you know, there's hyperinflation happening in Lebanon. The World Bank has said it's the worst economic collapse in the past 150 years, top 3 worst collapses. My friends and family have lost 99% of all of their money in the past 4 years because of hyperinflation, and I don't know much about politics, but that's bad. And I'm a product guy, and like that money doesn't sound good. And I'm sure there's governments and politics involved, but like that's not good money. Bitcoin is good money, and we're kind of, you know, I don't want to answer on your behalf, but like we're just building a better technology, better rails, better money, all built on Bitcoin, which I think solves, you know, problems for billions of people globally.
Yeah, I mean, not a subject matter expert here, but still like. I love, especially here when I come to Bitcoin Commons, it is that whole theme of, you know, whether Bitcoin is patriotic or not. Like I believe it absolutely is, because when it comes to, especially here in US, like you do have politicians that are against Bitcoin, but what they don't realize is that this is not something that you can stop. Like money and state will be separated. And Bitcoin is actually very beneficial to US dollar hegemony. Like if you now can't get US dollars in, say, Venezuela, but you can get in Bitcoin. And this is where I do hope that politicians do not over-regulate. And as Michael has said, like, we're lucky to work in companies where we have other people going to bat for us on that. But even, as a contributor to Bitcoin ecosystem, like, I think it's important to like pass that message and like we do have politicians that talk about that stance and like help others realize like how Bitcoin is very beneficial for America, for US dollar, and that shouldn't be stopped by some crazy regulations.
I know we're coming up on time, but just to close the loop on there, like it's kind of like if we overregulated the internet, like way back in the day, right? Like that would have been terrible for the United States if we're like, this internet is bad and you can't buy a .com and you can't use email. Like that would be terrible. So I feel confident we're going to do the right thing as a country and as builders, and we're all going to work collaboratively and figure out that this is a net win for the world and the United States. So it would be bad if we overregulated the internet.
We're going to win. Gentlemen, I mean, I have to thank you individually. I mean, I'm a BTC Pay server user. I'm a Strike user. I'm a CashApp user. I'm an Apple Pay user. Like, you guys have built.
You need a Tesla now, right? EV?
Not yet.
No,
Not yet.
okay. So sore subject in Texas, but there's a factory down here. Yeah.
But honestly,
Cybertruck.
Props to you guys. I mean, you guys have worked on 4 products that I use in my life every day. So thank you for that. Let's give a round of applause for these two gentlemen.
Thank you.